Welcome back to Channel Blue. This is probably the most interesting shot composition you've ever seen out here. It is quite weird, but believe it or not, it is quite hard to fit a whole laptop into small spaces in a sedan. So I'm just going to make do with this weird camera angle for now until I find a better one. I'm in a parking lot because it is pouring dangerously hard outside to the point where I could barely see out my windscreen because there's so much rain on it. So, needless to say, that would kind of mess with my audio recording. So, I found a garage to park my car in so that you're not hearing the tapping of the rain on the top of the car. Today, I'm going to be talking about why it is not worth it. I repeat, it is not worth it to be in a toxic relationship just because you feel like it's better than having nothing. I feel like a common theme with this channel is because I've been doing so much growth, there's a lot of times where I will be like, hey, here's a topic that I ignored for like 4 years because I thought it was just garbage. But actually it's true and you need to hear me out on this. Like, I feel like that's a pretty common theme I wouldn't say common theme, made an appearance in a couple of videos on my channel, but this is kind of another one of those situations where I was like, well, yeah, like, you know, being in a relationship with a less than ideal person, like, okay, of course, like, they're gonna hurt you, you're not gonna be, like, happy, it's gonna suck, but, like, fuck it, we ball. Like, if I was put in the situation to be in a toxic relationship where I could get something out of it every now and then, or just continue being single for however long it seems like it'll be, I would rather take the toxic relationship. And I'm here to tell you that I am not someone that's been in a real relationship ever in my life still, but I have had a shorter period of time where I was kind of in like a rough, I don't want to say situationship because I'm not a big fan of most Zoomer slang, but that might be Gen Z slang as well itself, but it's just kind of gross. But I feel like that's probably what would best describe it. I will admit I'm not really quite sure what a situationship means. It seems like it's just like a relationship with unclear boundaries, if I had to guess, or like boundaries that have been tried to be made, but then have been crossed over and over. And so now, like, neither of you really believe in each other's boundaries when you say you just want to be friends. And so it's kind of like off and on in that way. I'm assuming that's what a situationship is, but I don't really know. But to that definition, I guess you could say that I've been in a situationship. I don't know. It was really short, but I've learned enough to know what I am going to be saying in this video. So, without further ado, this is why it is at best something you should consider before getting into a relationship, knowing that you might end up finding a person that is not good for you and that you think is a good, caring person, but they actually just want something out of you right now. Maybe best case scenario, not like, oh, it's not worth it to get into a toxic relationship and you should be single, but at least it's something that you should consider before getting into a relationship rather than being single. So here's why. When you are in a relationship with a person that has historically not put in effort to understanding themselves or the people around them or just their own emotions, aka most men, you will find someone that does not see a point in communicating with you. The number one most helpful thing for any relationship, whether it be a friendship or otherwise, or, you know, an actual romantic relationship, is communication, no matter what. No matter what the problem is, no matter what type of relationship it is always communication that will help you. What's going to end up happening is when you get in a relationship with someone that you maybe ignore the red flags of, or like you're in like limerence or something and you don't see it, but when you get into a relationship with someone that is emotionally unavailable and has shunned themselves from self-reflection Like, when you date a person like that, you're going to end up dating a person that basically never wants to communicate with you whenever it comes to having a hard conversation about something. And to my previous point, communication is key to any relationship. Oftentimes, people think that if they're having an issue in a relationship, then to not burden the other person with their problems, they can just swallow it. And they can just adapt and be better and be more understanding and be more lenient, for example, instead of communicating. And that never works. That never works. That will never happen unless you come to terms with the fact that you're going to make your life absolutely miserable for the sake of this other person. Because if every time you have an issue, a real deep issue with another person in a relationship, and you just decide to swallow it and be like, well, this person doesn't like to talk about their feelings, this person doesn't like to have hard conversations, I'm just going to be a better partner, and I'm going to find new outlets, I'm going to journal about it, I'm going to X, Y, and Z about it, instead of communicating it, like, oh, it'll be fine, like, I'll get over it. But you don't get over it. That's not how it works. You can tell yourself that you've gotten over it, when in reality you're just settling for being in a relationship that hurts you every single day. But that is not getting over it, and you never will get over it, and you shouldn't have to get over any of your gripes with a relationship, because a relationship should be between two equal people that both deserve to have their needs met and their issues resolved. All that to say, that is just one example. And that is just one archetype of a person in a relationship where communication is key. When communication is avoided, confusion becomes commonplace, very commonplace. Confusion can lead to a plethora of questions you wish you didn't ask, underhanded comments that you wish you didn't say, leaving out some acts of love on some days because you feel subtly that this other person doesn't deserve it because they've treated you so horribly. This kind of tension and this kind of knotted unresolve inside of you that never goes away, it is going to surface in your behavior in small enough ways so you can justify saying that you've handled it, or you've swallowed, whatever issues you have in your relationship, whether it's like, they don't communicate enough, or they don't hang out with you enough, or they're very close with like one of your friends that makes you a little worried, etc. But it's going to come to the surface in small ways where you feel like you can justify saying that you swallowed it, but you didn't swallow anything. You didn't move past any of your issues on your own. You've just smothered your emotions and forced them to come out in less conventional ways. How did I get on that point? I don't remember. I kind of forgot what my point was before saying all of that, but, overall, I think confusion, yeah. When confusion rules in a relationship, actions like this are going to surface that are only going to be byproducts of you smothering your own emotional needs, and are only going to confuse your partner even more, because your emotional distress are going to come out in more and more absurd ways because you are convinced that you've moved on, or that you're working on yourself, and you're not letting your emotions like spout into like anger or like explosions. In reality, your emotional needs are still going to be expressed. They're just going to come out in more and more absurd ways that are going to be harder and harder for your partner to even read, if they ever did decide to become the person where they suddenly cared about your emotions, which is never going to happen. If they never started caring for your emotions, they're not going to just like wake up one day and be like, yes, it's time to step up and be a better person and make a real change in my life. All that to say, when confusion takes hold in a relationship, this is what's going to happen. And so, naturally, your instinct may be to ask questions and bring whatever confusion you have and whatever questions you have to the table, to the other person, and be like, hey, this is a problem I'm having, and you're not addressing it, and I want to know why. Can you please communicate with me so that we can get to the bottom of this and resolve it? And what's going to happen is, when you bring it to this kind of person, they're going to at least in my experience, they are going to try to make you sound crazy for doing that and point the finger on you for causing drama in your relationship and causing tension in your relationship by bringing up all these problems over and over and over again, when everything's fine and you don't need to bring up any of your emotional needs, because in doing so, they like to point the finger and call that emotional maturity something else. They like to call it being dramatic. They like to call that emotional maturity of seeing that you have a problem and wanting to eliminate confusion in your relationship and encourage communication. They're going to see that whole process and they're going to call you sensitive. They're going to call you dramatic. They're going to call you making a big problem out of nothing. That's one way where they might respond. And the sad part is they're probably responding that way because that's how they respond to their own emotional needs that they express to themselves in their own life. And that's how you can really peer into like the soul of a person, is like through a relationship. The way that they communicate with you on a certain level is how they talk to themselves. The way that they handle problems in a relationship is often how they handle problems in their own interior lives. This kind of makes sense in when someone has not shown that they care about their feelings for themselves in their lives before this relationship. It makes sense that that kind of person would also have all these relationship issues where they don't like to communicate with you because they have shown that they don't communicate with themselves. Like, this is why it's important to like actually love yourself as a person throughout your entire life, because if you don't show up for yourself, you're going to stumble over yourself and you're going to feel awkward for treating someone else that well when you don't even show yourself that respect when you have an issue in your life that you know and you just won't address. All that to say, they're going to see that emotional maturity in you and they're going to be confused because they don't have that and they don't utilize emotional maturity in their own lives for their own problems and how they talk to themselves. And so they're going to see that in you, and that's going to be alien to them, and it's going to be unfamiliar, and it's going to be uncomfortable. And so they will label you as being sensitive or dramatic or bringing things up over and over and over again when everything's fine. I think that sort of being confronted with a person that has emotional maturity and does know how to work through problems in their lives with intention and kindness for themselves and in relationships, being confronted with a person that does all of those things healthily, I think is kind of like a uncomfortably revealing mirror to those people that only reflects how poorly they treat themselves in their own life. And so I think part of it, apart from the fact that it's uncomfortable for them and it's unknown and it's unfamiliar and they don't know how to be emotionally productive, I think apart from that and in addition to that, there can also kind of be like a sort of hurt ego problem where they see like, you know yourself so much more than I do, and I really don't like that. Your willingness to communicate is so jarring in my face as someone that has never done that for myself that I don't even want to go there. It upsets me that you were like this, and it intimidates me, and I don't want that. So I want you to stop doing that, and I want to blame you and call you sensitive because I know that I don't do that for myself, and I don't like that you do that for yourself because that frightens me. I think that's another reason. I don't think that's the sole reason, but I do think that that's another reason that can sometimes be in a person in this kind of toxic relationship. So all that to say, this is kind of, it's not every toxic relationship, but this is like one type of toxic relationship where like you'll have one emotionally unavailable person and one person that has a history of of trying their best to care for themselves and listen to themselves and validate themselves, and someone that understands the importance of communication and follows through on that. And you just have this like really disgusting, very hurtful dynamic, especially for the person that wants to communicate between these two people. And that's definitely one type of toxic relationship that I myself am more familiar with. But I mean, there's so many more, and there are different. This is just like one instance of toxicity in a relationship, but there's so many more different ways where you can feel toxicity in a relationship. That's just one that I have experienced, and I think that what happens in this type of toxic relationship that I'm talking about is you start to go through this cycle where you try to bring up something to, the other person to try and resolve something, and then they call you sensitive and crazy and that you're like making a big deal out of nothing. And then you go, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I don't want to upset you. I want our relationship to, feel good. I want a relationship to be exciting and fun like it was in the beginning. And so I'm just going to, you get conditioned to not bring your problems to resolution whenever you feel them. And so you withdraw and you're like, okay, well, I don't want to make, anything worse, but withdrawing it doesn't make it go away. And so I'm going to keep noticing things about your behavior that I don't like. And I'm going to be like, oh, I should say something so that we can resolve it. But no, remember they said that they didn't like that. So I should just keep it in. But what happens is that you just keep doing that over and over and over again until eventually you either explode or, like I've been talking about before, your relationship needs bubble up in more and more absurd ways that get harder and harder to read and less productive. Either way, I think both can happen as well. You're just going to keep withdrawing and there will be negativities that will come out of that. That's, and so that you kind of get into the cycle where you try and bring something up to them, they castigate you for it, and then you withdraw, and then it bubbles and you keep noticing things, and then you're like, I'm so sorry, I can't take it anymore. I have to bring this to you because it really hurts me. And then they do it again and they're like, okay, you're being dramatic. It's not that deep, blah, blah, blah. And you withdraw and then it bubbles and bubbles. And so that's why I say, especially for the person that is more adept to communication in relationships, it really sucks for that person a lot as well, because they just want what's best for the relationship, which is to communicate and resolve issues. But for whatever reason, like the reasons I was, talking about before, the other person is going to shut you down for doing that, for trying to resolve issues. You get it to a point where you start to doubt yourself. You start to doubt your own opinions on your relationship. You start to doubt like how intelligent you are. And so like, this is why I say, as someone that for so long has felt like I roll my eyes at the whole advice of like, it's better to be single than to be in a toxic relationship. Like, that's something I've rolled my eyes at for so long, but there is genuinely a huge truth to that, which is that like, if you get into a toxic relationship like this, you can start to doubt like your own preferences, and you start to doubt what you even deserve in relationships and your standards and what you should put up with in life. Like, it messes with your sense of self and your confidence and like your autonomy. It will set you back months or years of work when you get out of this relationship to address these issues that have arisen out of being in such a toxic push and pull, like stop and go type of relationship, where you're kind of just like, thrown from every extreme, from like the high highs and the low lows and like the validation sometimes and the pulling away the next day. Like, it causes you to like lose your own sense of like internal knowledge of yourself, and it can make being in a healthy relationship take even longer than if you just stayed single. And as a counterpoint, it is also helpful to go through these relationships and know like, okay, well, now I know in my next relationship this is what to look for, these are the red flags to spot. Like, for me, if I start to sense this kind of emotional unavailability in a person, I'm going to be like, oh, I know how this is going to go, I know how this is going to play out, I know most likely, when I'm going to get blamed and what I'm going to get blamed for. And I already know that this isn't going to work out. And so like, to that point, yes, if you've been in a toxic relationship like this, it's not all bad. And of course, you can always learn something from these experiences. But I wouldn't turn away from the advice of preferring being single to being in a toxic relationship just because being in any relationship is better than being single. Like, it's just, you have to address that need and that want that makes you so desperate to jump head first into a relationship that you deep down in your gut know is probably not going to work out and is probably not ideal for you. Whatever is causing you to turn a blind eye to that advice and be like, yeah, well, I'd rather still be in a toxic relationship than be single. Address that. is my advice for you, is to address that, whatever is causing you to want that relationship so badly, so that you can continue growing as a person that's going to be lovable to the kind of person that's going to treat you with respect and who will actually love you. I think that's the best path forward, is to not turn a blind eye to that advice. So, woo. Yeah, that's kind of all I got. That was just a bunch of rambling, honestly, about toxic stuff and why they're not good. Again, my video is out. The one with the classical music, it's a little cringe, but, like, I love it still. And I've worked on it for so long, so, like, go watch it if you want. And, yeah, that's low-key all I've got for you. Thank you for tuning in again. More music video project thingies will be in development, but I gotta figure out what I want to do first. So yeah, I'm gonna be doing that. But thank you for tuning in for this weird car video. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.